Good evening. It's Tuesday night, 8 o'clock, and this is the Bob Leonard Show. We'll be with you for about an hour. We take the stories you've been watching on television and reading in the newspaper the last couple of weeks, and we put our spin on it. We tell you what we think is really behind these mainstream media stories that often are just handouts coming from the politicians or government officials, and they always make themselves look good. And it isn't always that way, and that's what we're looking for, is the background. We want to keep them honest, as we say. So we'll be on for about an hour, and this program will be repeated tomorrow night at 11 to 12. And if you can't stay up that late and you miss tonight, it's shown on a continual basis on flinttalk.com. Just punch in flinttalk.com and the program will come up, and in fact it goes back 5 or 6 weeks. You can pick any one you want and plug it in and it'll be on. But anyway, let us move on, because there's a number of things we want to talk to you about tonight that directly affect the well-being of our communities. You know, in a couple of weeks, the two largest cities in Genesee County will conduct two of the most important elections they've had in many years. First, the city of Flint will be deciding whether Flint Mayor Don Williamson should be renominated for another term. There'll be 2 people nominated out of 7 people running. Williams is one of them. It's expected that he probably will be nominated, one of the 2 nominated, and then they'll go into the general election. And the question you have is, should he be reelected, or should a new candidate be ushered in to start Flint going in a different direction? Now, the issue Williams's opponents are critical of Williams about is the crime problem that every urban community seems to be experiencing recently, and then the high unemployment figures that seem to be haunting Flint. Now, Williamson will counter with his success in solving the Flint budget problem by showing that the city's financial situation has improved, and he's responsible for that. You might remember that that in the past, when he ran for election, the paramount issue was the financial crisis Flint was in, and then the campaign promises that he made to try to deal with the problem. Now, keep in mind, he was elected 4 years ago, but the first 2 years was a financial manager here, and it was run by Ed Kurtz from the state that came in because of the serious financial condition the city was in. They were in debt for about $30 million. Now, Williamson argues that I've dealt with that problem and have solved it. And here's a journal editorial. Flint is back in the black, referring to $6.5 million surplus recorded in 04 and 05. And he has another surplus this year, his second year in effect in the office, of about $6-7 million also. So he claims he has demonstrated that what he promised to do, he had done it. Now, I think only the public will decide whether or not they're satisfied with what he's done and what these other people are talking about. And we'll get into that in just a minute. And then, along with Flint, we have the mayor's primary election in the city of Burton, where Mayor Charles Smiley has held forth for 16 years. And in the last couple of years, allegations of corruption has dogged the Smiley administration. In fact, just recently, in a federal district court jury found Smiley's close confidant, chief administrator and public works director Charles Abbey, guilty of bribery. Now, Smiley's name was brought up prominently during the federal investigation and the federal trial. Smiley himself has been accused of taking bribes from an admitted briber. The federal attorney, in his closing statement at the Abbey trial, characterized Burton as a corrupt city run by Smiley's corrupt administration. Now, Smiley says he hasn't been charged, the investigation's over. This is just wishful thinking. This investigation is still ongoing, and according to many insiders, there may very well be some other indictments. They haven't cleared anybody yet. We know that there are people being interviewed by the FBI still. Now, tonight, because of the limitations on time, we'll take Flint and discuss the Flint and the candidates and what they're saying and Williamson's record as we see it. And next week we'll get into the Burton matter. So if you're interested in Burton, tune in next week and we'll have some discussions about that. But let's first talk about the Flint situation and the candidates and the election that's coming up in about 2 weeks. You know, so far the campaign for mayor of Flint is not, you look at it, it's nothing but a mouthful of cliches and generalities. In my opinion, none of the 6 opponents of Mayor Williamson has offered real solutions to Flint's problems. Everything these candidates offer lacks specificity, and when they show anything specific, they show their naivety, their lack of understanding of what the problems are. Now, they do have one common denominator, and that is they all blindly attack Williamson. You know, while Flint is in need of bold leadership, as demonstrated by 100,000 GM jobs lost locally over the last 15 years, and the crime problem becoming even more acute, none of these candidates offer any programs that will alleviate these problems. No specific ideas. They just talk in generalities. Like I said, when you look at the suggestions on solving the problems, it amounts to nothing more than cliches and high-sounding phrases with no substance. Now, you'll notice that all these opponents of Williamson, they have these solutions to the crime problem is appointing, they all have it, appointing a full police chief rather than an acting one. Yeah, come on, people. Do you think that sacking this acting police chief for a permanent one will solve Flint's crime problems? You know, the guy that's in there now, it has to do with his pension and things, and that's why they haven't made him police chief. Because if a new mayor ever came in, he could go back to his job in the police department as a captain or whatever he was. But he does have a good reputation in the country. He's often called upon by the police associations to testify before Congress. He has a good reputation, and he would have one here in Flint if it wasn't for the attacks that some of the anti-Williamson people put on the man. I mean, I don't always agree with them. But just to change police chief from acting to police chief, they'd have to have a magic wand to solve these problems. You know, solving Flint's crime problems will take more than just a change in the police chief. It takes plans and programs. Now, when you do such solutions, the person who makes the suggestions must first understand the problems of what causes crime. It's easier said than done than to talk about putting more cops on the street. That's fine. But there's no mention where the money will come from. It takes about $120,000 for an additional police recruit to be processed through the school and begin working with his salary and his benefits and his pension. Yeah, you must know what programs and ideas would suppress crimes. You know, candidates apparently don't know because they have not ever mentioned what is their understanding of what the causes of crime are. And if they knew what the causes were, they certainly are keeping it a secret. And of course, if they don't know what the causes are, how can they tell you how to deal and solve the problems of crime and how to reduce it? Many of their interviews, as you'll see from the journal, seems to demonstrate these candidates don't really understand these niceties. Listen, after spending 23 years in law enforcement, I can tell you the main reason for the increase in crime rate in all the urban cities around the country now, according to the criminologists and the police officers associations, is the Bush administration dismantling the Clinton administration federal funding of successful local programs like the police foot patrol that we were supposed to have here in Flint. Remember, we're paying a millage for that. About $7-8 million we're paying. How many of you have seen police officers walking on the streets? You know, every knowledgeable person in crime prevention field has touted the foot patrol program as the main reason for the crime rate going down in the 1990s when Clinton was pouring federal monies into urban areas to innovate and come up with new programs that work. The foot patrol was the star attraction. When Bush took over, he reduced and then ultimately eliminated the federal funding for all these local programs. As a result, the crime rate began to soar. Now, here's an example. Just about 2 weeks ago on the national news, it showed the use of a foot patrol in Boston. They took and put police on the sidewalks in the community in 2 high crime areas. And in 6 months, according to this national report, the crime rate on murders dropped 35%, rape and armed robbery, the other 2 serious crimes, assaultive crimes, dropped 31%. Now that tells you something of what goes on. That's why these foot patrols that were introduced by the Clinton administration back in the 90s and were put in almost every urban city in the country, that's why crime is reduced. These people, when you have people on the streets walking the sidewalks who know the neighbors, who can say hello to them and call them by their first name, and they know that in 15 to 20 minutes this guy will be back around again, that has an impact to reduce crime and has proven to do so. You know, the claim by anyone that any mayor of an urban city like Flint is the cause in the jump of the crime rate over the last 6 or 7 years. Keep in mind, Williams has been there 2 years since he's been mayor. He's been elected 4 years ago, but he wasn't there for the first 2 years because of the financial manager. But to suggest that is an attempt, in my mind, by these candidates to deceive the public. And they tell you they're going to solve the problem. The first thing they're going to do, every one of them talk about putting a police chief in. And, you know, full-time, like acting and full-time will make a difference. Either they haven't really studied the problem, or they're totally unaware of the complex nature of the causes of crime. Or they're outright lying to the public if they do know. They're oversimplifying the solution. The solution to them is get rid of Williamson. He's the cause of the crime rate going up. There's all kinds of factors involved here. The unemployment figure is substantial. And it isn't like Flint is the only place in the state of Michigan with serious high unemployment. It's statewide. Every urban center in the city of Flint, Pontiac, Detroit, Lansing, you name it, Kalamazoo, Flint, Bay City, Saginaw, have serious unemployment problems. And that feeds into the problem of crime. When people are working and people are fully employed, you don't have that serious crime problem continuing to grow. It really begins to lessen. Now, it would seem to me that in all fairness, you can't blame that all on Williamson. He didn't cause the downturn in the state of Michigan and ultimately the downturn in the urban areas where all these manufacturing jobs were. Now you have the other major issue that has occupied the minds of these candidates is the poor Flint economy and job picture for Flint. The automobile giant, General Motors, took these jobs, put them in Mexico and all over the United States over the last 10 or 15, 20 years. How could Williamson affect that? We lost 100,000 jobs. Both blue-collar and white-collar workers, closing businesses down all over the city of Flint because people didn't have any money. They weren't working for General Motors. People in Europe and South America were making the money, even though nowhere near what they made here, but they took the jobs down there because it was cheaper for them to operate. Now, I haven't seen any drop in the prices of cars. No, it just means more profit for these corporations. But can you blame Williamson for all of this? Now, I think you can challenge him on the basis that he claimed, or he suggested when he was running, he was going to create jobs and what have you. Now, the question is, has he? I think they have an obligation. Williamson people say, oh, yeah, we've created jobs. I know what they've done. In some areas, we've saved 22,000 jobs out there on Van Slyke with a new engine plant and things like that. And he was directly involved in negotiating those kinds of things for the city of Flint. So was the governor. So were other people in this community. The UAW was directly involved. They had to make concessions. But all these people were working on saving that plant out there, and they did it. I think Williams, since he was involved, can take some credit for it. And of course, the question is that enough? Did he promise more than he could deliver? And I think that's a fair question to ask. I think you can't blame one person for all these problems in crime and unemployment. And like I say, all we're trying to do is keep these candidates honest with their allegations and what they're saying. But it's fair game to remind voters what he promised, and the question is, did he fulfill the promise? Some people might say, yeah, he's done a good job. Others will say, no, he hasn't. But it's a fair debate. Now, there's a lot more to this crime problem than first meets the eye. I think the one thing that you have to do is to figure out what's happened to that $6 or $7 million, and what's happened to it. No one stole it. That's been voted by the people on a millage for the foot patrol. Because of the cutbacks in other funding for the regular police department, they've just diverted that to these other departments. So it's still being used in law enforcement, But I don't think it's having the impact it should as if it was used just for the foot patrol. I think the foot patrol back on the streets would have a tremendous impact. And none of these candidates, except one of them, I think his name is, let me see. Wayhill mentioned the foot patrol. I'm not sure he understands fully about the millage, and because there's no mention of that. But my argument is that money should be spent on the foot patrol, which the millage directs it to be spent on, and shouldn't be spent anyplace else. Somebody says, well, we won't have money for the regular police department. Well, then make cuts other place else and fill out the police department's needs. But the foot patrol could reduce crime, and I suggest that's what should be done. And you know, there's all kind, you know, when you talk about retirees and things like that being ripped off and defrauded and everything, you know, I would have liked to have seen one of these candidates come up with a proposal to submit to the county under the senior citizen millage that was just passed, and request funding for that purpose so that they can come back to the city so that you can help the senior citizens in the city of Flint protect themselves against frauds, make sure that they have the needs taken care of, make sure those foot patrols are in their areas, identify who they are so that the police can watch out for them. There's a lot, you know, there's about $5-6 million still has not been distributed by the senior citizen millage group that is really waiting for proposals. These candidates, it seems to me, if they want to cut crime, and one of the serious problems with crime is how it centers on the vulnerability of seniors. They should be out there figuring out what proposal I can make. Let me see a proposal that you'll submit to the county to get money for the city of Flint if you're a mayor. How will that proposal help seniors? Besides helping them in protecting them from criminals, you may come up with, you know, you protect them in the rip-offs of these people out of probate court. You know, you'll be looking to give them funding for Meals on Wheels, visiting nurses, transportation. That directly affects the seniors in the city of Flint. Where are the proposals that these people would make? There's money there. Haven't heard a thing about it. You know, such things as padlockings that you can proceed against houses that are raided for drugs or prostitution or what have you. I'd like to see somebody say, we're really going to crack down and start padlocking these houses when they're raided. Not just walk away from it. You know, and then we talk about the demolition. There's all kinds of money in demolition that's available, and we'll talk about it here in just a few moments, on how it is being ignored and how the personality conflict between the mayor and the city council is allowing that conflict to impact the money that could be used for demolition, and as a result is hurting the city of Flint because we're not getting it. Well, anyway, let me go through some of these. I noticed that in the paper the other day. It says, arrows flying as Williamson's challengers near primary date. It says, less than 3 weeks before the August primary, several Flint mayoral candidates appear to be stepping up their attacks on Mayor Don Williamson. That's their common denominator. I want to know, what are you going to do about crime, and what are you going to do about unemployment and all the other things you're talking about? Candidate Dale Wighill started out the debate Thursday at the UAW 651 by mocking Williamson's campaign slogan. They said he's moving up. Candidate Norm Bryant called Williamson anti-union. Sheldon Neely said the mayor does not treat others with respect. And Dan Whaling accused the mayor of costing the city $15 million. They don't explain those things. They really don't explain them. Let's, first let me look at Norm Bryant, who is running. Norm is, I know Norm. He's not a real close friend of mine, but I've known him for a number of years, and he's a very nice man. His biggest problem is his close association with Woodrow Stanley, the recalled mayor. And I don't think that's a good thing. But I think he's honest and sincere. But again, when he talks about what he's going to do, he says he decided to return to politics because he was frustrated with rampant crime in Williamson. He apparently is blaming Williamson. Bryan said what he calls his 100-day plan, which outlines what his immediate priorities as mayor would be, though many details remain vague. And that's my arguing about these people. He wants to name a permanent police chief. This is what they all are talking about. Hire a liaison to work with the schools. You have to realize the school district pays, I think, the city $500,000 or $1 million a year to provide liaison officers for the high schools and the junior high school. That's already going. It's in existence. And this is a fellow that was a member of the school board. Now he wants to appoint hire a liaison to work with the schools. The police are already doing that. They're in the schools. They talk every day. And it says form a task force to bring senior citizens and youth together. Now, let me just mention one example of that. When they did it once, they put the youth and the senior citizens together without too much screening, and the senior citizens came up short in their pocketbooks and whatever they had with them. I'm not suggesting that every kid does that. I just say you got to screen more carefully and know who's going to be there and make sure there's people covering for the senior citizens. And then it says create jobs and develop an economic plan. And it says this, Bryan said he already is working to bring environmentally friendly jobs to Flint. Efforts he declines to detail. Well, that's what I'm talking about. Lack of detail. Then we have a fellow by the name of David Davenport. He's a candidate for Flint mayor. He referees youth basketball at Mount Olive Baptist Church from time to time and in other churches. And he says what he wanted to do, he wants to give, here's what the paper says, his ideas are sometimes grandiose, such as his plan to pay Flint middle and high school students for their grades to motivate them to stay in school. I don't know if that's going to do it, but I don't think it's a bad idea. The problem is, here's what he said his program would pay $20 for A's, $10 for B's, and $5 for C, and the students would get the money on a Visa debit card. Such a program would cost more than $1 million, which Davenport said he would raise from Flint residents, the school system, the city's general fund, and area churches. Well, I don't know if we should be buying kids' grades. I don't know what message that sends. But it cost $1 million. Where are you going to get the $1 million? He's going around with his hat in his hand? You're not going to come up with $1 million, I'll tell you. And then here's this young lady by the name of Tamara Edwards. It is an interesting thing. We have all these people flocking back to Flint because I think they see an opportunity, and I don't have any objection to that, but that's what's happened here. I'm inclined to think we have people who have lived here in Flint all their lives that would do just as well. But anyway, she's She lived in the front for 10 years and went to Durham, North Carolina, where she was a member of the city council. And she says she's fond of talking with visions about visioning, empowerment, and good government, but usually as broad aspirations rather than specific how do you do it plans. That's, again, that same thing. And she says, we don't have time for someone to get into office and learn how to do it. Well, she's never been a mayor, but she's been a member of the city council in North Carolina. She wants to see the city tap into the automobile roots, although not wholly rely on the industry again, and develop solar cars at old plants. College could retain workers and people could go back to work. It's an example of how she would think outside the box as Flint mayor, but does not know exactly how to make her plans a reality. You know, you talk these high-sounding phrases, these cliches, all sound good. When it comes to specifics, even the paper points it out. Edwards rates crime as her number one issue. She wants to name a permanent police chief. Enhance the neighborhood watch program, which is in existence already. And encourage city beautification, perhaps through church adopt a block program. Well, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. She also said she considers bringing elements of the program she said she developed as vice president of the YMCA in Durham to cut gang violence through mediation. Through mediation. Then she wants to put up video cameras all in the crime areas, and the question is, who would pay for the video cameras? She says that's something we have to talk about. Anyway, you know, she has, I think, generally a pretty good background. Now, one of the things she wants to do, I think, that has to be considered, she wants to have a master plan. That sounds great, master plan. Master plan tries to project, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ahead about where the streets are going, what you're going to need for water. And that's really kind of been done. But the bottom line is this. A total master plan that she's talking about, that other people talk about, costs $1 million. Bring those people in for Harvard, Yale, or wherever, and project what the city will need down the road. So you spend $1 million, which you don't have. You don't have $1 million. What do you do then? Where do you get the money for this? Now, not only that, if you spend $1 million to come up with the plan, what good is that going to do? Because the next guy in, he doesn't have to follow, or she doesn't have to follow the plan. It's kind of crazy. But anyway, then we have Mr. Neely. The determined mayor, oral critic, aspires to top job. And that's the bottom line. This guy is nothing but an obstructionist. Listen to what this tells you something about. Sheldon Neely prides himself on dogging Mayor Don Williamson. When Williamson showed up at the Canusa games, so did Neely. When Bill Cosby spoke at the New Jerusalem Full Gospel Baptist Church, Neely positioned himself right next to Williamson, kind of like a thorn in his side. Neely, vice president of city council, and now one of the 7 candidates running for mayor, chuckles at what he suspects is his irritating presence. You want a guy like that for mayor? He's an obstructionist like we say he is. He just, you know, it's a game with him. He's immature. Then we have a fellow by the name of Dale Righill. And incidentally, all these people are talking about changing the acting chief of police, replacing him. And I said that, you know, he has a good reputation, but he's become a sounding board for all the anger against Williamson and it's put on him. And I think what a lot of these people are saying, if not most of them, it's not really, they want to change police, they want a black police chief. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. This is a city with 65% African American. African Americans have been abused by police for 200 years in major urban areas like Flint. I'm sure the African American community would have more confidence if there was an African American police chief in the direction of the police department and what goes on in the police department. But, you know, anybody to think a police chief will come in and has a magic wand to take care of the problem all by himself, they're sadly mistaken. And I think the white community would not object to that. I think the white community would say, hey, if it'll help the crime problem and give more confidence to people, the great majority of the people in the community, I have confidence that that's the right thing to do. I don't think there's anything wrong with suggesting we have an African American police chief. But I don't think any of these candidates, even the black candidates, have the courage to say it because that's really what they're interested in. And I think that's great. I have no objection to that. But anyway, this fellow Dan Walling, he's got a lot of things to say. But again, his primary objective is to eliminate the crime problem by eliminating Williamson and the police chief. Now, Wighill is originally from Detroit, Livonia. He worked for a couple of Republicans, and he says he's now a member of the Democratic Party. We had that problem before. Remember the fellow by the name of Conyers who ran for mayor against Jim Sharp, beat Sharp, professed he was a Democrat and turned out to be a Republican. He's going to run for Congress against Dale Kildee. So these people that say now in the city of Flint, they're Democrats, you got to look at their history. Let's hope he's done what he says. But anyway, he says he would appoint a new police chief. He wanted to create a community-centered strategic plan that will fight crime by involving Flint residents. Sounds good. How are you going to do that? Anyway, you know, Williamson there are block hubs all over this city. He has many stations in there. And then he puts on here what he would do is he would open up the Flint City Jail. He's already done that. He says Office of Strategic Partnership to create new programs for youth called Flint Promise that would guarantee a mentor for every young person who needs one. Boy, that's grandiose because the Urban Coalition, the NAACP, and the Urban League have been on that project for years. They've done a good job on it. But they haven't come close to covering everyone that needs a mentor. But anyway, these people all have the same objective. Bash Williamson and then come up with generalities as to the solution of problems, or making suggestions about things that are already done and suggesting they're not done. So anyway, and then we have, if I can find it, we have Mr. Walling. I can find it here. Who says again, what will you do about crime? All of Flint's families deserve to be safe in their homes and neighborhoods. No kidding. Permanent police chief officer will be given respect, training, and technology, I guess, to do their jobs. Police patrols will be assigned to the same blocks with missions of cutting down on gun violence. I don't know whether he's talking about the foot patrol, but that would be something he should do. He should talk about that. It says here, after returning from England, Walling, where he was apparently studying law, he worked in the office of Washington, D.C. Mayor Anthony Williams for more than 2 years. While there, he said he acquired valuable experience on how city government should be run. With all the problems that Washington said, I don't know whether you want to bring it here or not. And then, of course, Williamson is interviewed, and Mayor Don Williamson, you know, he has a lot of faults, and let's face it, he has faults. And one of them is, I think he's just an arrogant ass sometimes. But does he get the job done? I guess that's what people are most concerned about. And he points out, you know, he's got the city out of debt, he's opened the jail, he's got more people, criminals off the street because of the jail. He says his job, he says, is to protect taxpayers' money. There's a lot of truth in that, but he has an obligation in regard to crime and what have you. And I think the impact on crime could be substantial if you would take that money that's intended for the foot patrol, give it to the foot patrol, put the people back on the streets, and you will impact crime. I'm sorry I'm not hearing this from the candidates. I think that's a legitimate issue. Why are we diverting this money? Now, you know, it's needed, obviously, but the question is, which is needed most? And I say the foot patrol. But anyway, I have something I want to show you. You know, you constantly hear the argument about who's right and who's wrong. The mayor is fighting with the city council. The council is fighting with the mayor. You know, it's really kind of 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. Just recently this week, there was another thing that came up at the committee meeting. And the issue was some resolutions sent up by the mayor for road building, for demolition, and Mott Foundation wanting to give a grant. All this money could be lost if we don't act on it. It had nothing to do with the budget. It wasn't, none of the money comes out of the budget. It was all coming out of federal monies, land bank monies, general grant money, all money we've already spent, all we've already given in taxes. Now, the land grant money, also there is some money that's accumulated from selling these properties and things like that. But anyway, it seems to me that this little exchange here, it runs about 12, 13 minutes. This exchange shows you what's going on here. The resolutions came up. There is no reason to deny, to vote down these resolutions or not to pass these resolutions. The only problem you have with here is if they continue to do this, we're going to lose the money. Millions and millions of dollars. Play that tape, will you? Watch this tape.
Do the emergency purchase today, and there's still a lead time with the product. It takes 45 days on average, it sounds, to get the product here to the city. So even if you executed an emergency purchase tomorrow, you're not getting it until September, October. So that's the only thing I want to bring to everyone's attention, that these things aren't made overnight. We got to plan ahead as to what we're going to purchase, and then from that point it takes a certain amount of time to get here between transportation and fabricating that particular product and manufacturing the product because they're made to order. That's my only point on these. But now again, I mean, I can see that the city is going to get approved, but I just wanted to make that for the record that we aren't serving. Again, we're not the ones being affected. It's the residents of the city of Central, the ones that are being affected.
And I want to say to Mr. Mayor, I supported it the first time, and it meant no disrespect, Mr. Gonzalez, this failed 4-4 at a meeting you were absent at. That we could have had this done in February. Talked to Mr. Foltz about it then, hoping somebody would bring it back, but I'm not an idiot. So it's going to fail.
Mr. Chairman, if the mayor and the finance director and the budget director would meet with the leadership of the city council, we could probably have this. Well, you know, I'll talk about the real leadership of the council, that this budget issue could be resolved. You know, the leadership isn't just one person.
Right.
This is the finance chair and the vice chair.
Right.
I don't know if you guys meet with them. They don't have to be in the van. It can be in this room or somewhere else. Thank you.
More discussion. All those in favor of postponement for 2 weeks, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Aye. Okay,
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I think we ought to concede the fact that nothing's going to get passed here. And that, I think it's wasting everybody's time debating each of these individually. I certainly would recommend that we just postpone those items that you talked about for 2 weeks. In the meantime, I will do everything I can to convince the mayor to meet with yourself and the vice chair.
Thank you, Mr.
but prior to that, I want to say on page 11, which is 24 right now, I want to do some for 070775. Let's just drop that and get out of the way. That's we already did that. You got a roof drop. 775? Yeah, we did that already. Any discussion? Seeing now, all in favor of dropping? All opposed? Okay. So is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we just postpone everything that was separated and all the new agenda items for 2 weeks.
Okay, so moved and supported, Mr. Ayers.
I certainly hope you don't postpone the new items. Some of these new items have absolutely nothing to do with the 08 budget. For instance, we have received a grant from MISHTA, the Cities of Promise program, which is one of the governor's initiatives, and it is a grant for $852,000, as the $882,000 to demolish 294 structures. These are for public-owned structures, and we have a contract with the land bank that you have approved. We can use the land bank's dollars, and they would only have to pay 50% for the cost of demolition. This $882,000 would have to be spent by December the 31st, and they have informed us if we can spend that money by December the 31st, they have another $1 million. In addition to that, this is a 4-year program. There are 8 cities of promise in the state, and there is $8 million set aside each year for this. And if we do not submit this, we are liable to get left at the gate and forfeit $8 million. And it has nothing to do with the budget. And I would certainly request that you approve that. Then the next one, 070904, we have received a grant from the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation regarding the 3rd Avenue project, which is underway, and that is $208,644, and that would be added to the grant that you've already approved from the Ruth Mott Foundation, and then we will receive an enhancement grant from the state for $730,253.58. So that's $1.25 million that we could forfeit. And that project is well underway. I mean, I believe they're paving out there today. And then the next one, this would not be any money that would be spent this year. The Kersley Streetscape project, that's the Flint Cultural Development, and that neighborhood, this is basically from Poplar Street to the planetarium, and this is an enhancement grant that we are requesting. This will not be spent in this budget year. But it takes a while to get these things moving, and then the Flint Cultural Center are going to do exactly what the Third Avenue group did, work to get the matching grants. It would cost the city of Flint a penny. And I would certainly ask that you do approve those three items. They're very, very important, and they're extremely necessary.
Mr. Chairman? I'll make a substitute motion for all the new items that they go to special affairs. But let me just point out, and I agree again with Mr. Ayers, but Bill, you know, like the 070903, the MISTA grant is requesting money out of the 08 budget. The city council put money in for demolition in the budget that we adopted. The mayor vetoed it and took it out. I mean, I'm talking about demolition for homes that don't fall under the criteria of emergency, that are in neighborhoods, that are established neighborhoods, that are in my ward, Mr. Gonzalez's ward, Mr. Antoinette's ward, that aren't eligible for these block grant dollars to get these homes torn out. I've got one built on Dearborn Street, no roof on it whatsoever, can't get it torn out. These programs are very important to the city. I mean, you can tell Mr. Ayers knows these programs are important to the city. If these programs are so important to the city, and these grants are so important to the city, that's all the more reason that the mayor and the finance director and the budget director needs to meet with the leadership of the council. And until that happens, I'm not going to accept a grant from no one in the 08 budget until that budget's resolved, Bill. That's just me. That is just me. I'm willing to move these to special affairs, but I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to vote for them at Monday's council meeting if they go there.
Scott, this money is for publicly owned property, to match publicly owned property. They are not limited to the CDBG areas. Any public property that's owned by any public entity, could be Hurley Hospital, could be the land bank, could be one of the schools. And we have been tearing down these properties, but now we have grant money to do it. So it isn't all in the CDBG areas that we're talking about. This is citywide. And the money is there, and if we don't get on the ground floor, we're liable to miss the boat.
Well, the other thing I'm going to tell you, Bill, is tell the mayor to get the budget resolved with the council, or just forget about even applying for this money.
Scott, I believe the citizens of the city of Flint deserve more.
Well, they do deserve more, and the mayor ought to be giving it to them by meeting with the leadership of the council.
I just want to make a comment following on what Scott is saying. There is a request for 50% match dollars, and this resolution states that they'll be getting $465,000 from the CDBG fund. Anytime you use those funds, they are for designated areas. Isn't that correct? Of course, if we had someone from major grants, they could really tell us that.
We are able to use these CDBG funds in almost every area of the city. And what it says is a 50% match, and mostly the match will come from the land bank.
Well, 417,000 for people. Well, it's right here.
Well, it says Genesee County Land Bank funds, let's see.
Well, there's a discrepancy there.
The city is committed to provide the required 50% match funds that will originate from CDBG funds and Genesee County Land Bank funds. We have a commitment from the land bank to do $865,000 worth of demolition. That will more than make up for that.
But just for clarification, because I am looking at the resolution staff review sheet, and you're correct, Mr. Ayers, when it says the city has committed to provide the required 50% matching funds, which will be a total of $882,000, which is the same that we're getting from the city of Promise. And these dollars will originate, again, CDBG funds at $465,000, Genesee County Land Bank funds at $417,000 will be available. And, and I know, I have several burnout structures in that area, several, in walking distance. And I know, again, the importance of demolishing these unsightly, blighted areas and so forth. But again, if it's that important, where's the person for major grants, and where is these dollars coming from? And I know the urgency in spending this is because it looks like we'll probably be losing another $500,000 for home dollars. It won't be the city of Eugene, but we have to spend like $400,000 by the end of July 07. So in a few weeks,
I don't have anything to do with the home dollars.
Yeah, I know that. I just commented because I'm talking about the city of Eugene grants. So I don't have a problem with sending this to special affairs, and hopefully, whatever my colleagues want to do. But again, I'm not prepared to vote on because I don't even know where this is coming from, which funding. Are we looking at the new $100? Are we looking at money from this year, fiscal year, or what? I don't know.
No, I was just glad to see this proposal on the table because, again, it does allow, from my understanding, this money to be used in areas such as the 8th Ward, where, of course, that represents, so the more that we can help out there, that's in my best interest. But I think I remember reading somewhere that if these monies aren't expended by the end of the year, that the state will recapture them.
Absolutely.
And so, again, this is another example. If we don't act on something, by the time we act, we don't have enough money to expend all the money, and then it goes back to the state. Now, the governor has, what's it called, cities of promise, in an effort to help depressed areas such as Flint, Muskegon Heights, Hamtramck, Benton Harbor, and places such as that, and we need to do our best to spend 100% of the money that's out.
Well, I think we get the idea. I'm sorry to cut off Mr. Gonzalez, but I only have about 2 minutes left. But I just to respond to a couple of things that happened here. We're talking about millions and millions of dollars in grants that are there for us, that we pay taxes on through the federal government, the state government, what have you. No money coming out of the general fund for any of this. It's a gift. And my foundation is making a gift. The feds and the state government making gifts of millions of dollars, but the resolutions have to be passed by the city council. And what do we hear from Scott Kincaid? Who's a friend of mine now. I like him. There's nobody more knowledgeable in city government than him. But he says, hey, we're not going to vote for any resolution for any of this money, millions and millions of dollars, until the mayor gives in on the budget on whether or not he's right on the budget or we're right on the budget. It has nothing to do with the budget. This is extortion. The mayor takes a position, he's right on the budget, the council says they're right on it. It's a legitimate issue. So trying to coerce somebody into do it by saying we're not going to take millions and millions of dollars that will help our people, it's ridiculous. Now he sent it to the Affairs Committee, and it was turned down just this week. Turned down. I mean, and it won't come up again for 30 more days. This money could be lost in that time. What are these people thinking of? I can understand why Kincaid is upset with the mayor. He said, he and the mayor got into it, and the mayor said some things I don't think he should have said. But, hey, don't let that personal animosity directly impact the quality of life for our citizens. Demolishing rundown houses, drug dens,